Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Columnist for the Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens, and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani, remain alongside me. Lee says, please can I get in touch and tell you I'm so bored of all the political stuff that's going on at the moment. The government always makes promises, they don't keep it, we know they're not going to keep it, and all of this is impacting this country, which is desperately crying out for change, he says. One of my viewers as well says, can I just say I'll be voting for a safe bet, the Liberal Democrats. I was asking about those guys. They've just had their spring conference. I was asking you a few days ago, wasn't I, about whether or not you still think they're in it. Are they still in the game? Many of you seem to be quite passionate about them, which surprised me a little bit, I must confess. One of my viewers says, my mother has just spent 18 hours in A&E in a corridor on a trolley. She says, I look at what's going on and she despairs. She suggests that there's priorities taking place in the NHS, which isn't always favouring people that have perhaps been chipping in and paying their way via their national insurance. What do you think to that one? Let's talk, though, let's broaden our scope, shall we? Because today, the UK has provided food now for 275,000 people in Gaza. This is the biggest aid package that we've done so far. Of course, Lord Cameron, he's been speaking out quite a lot about this issue. He's saying that we need to have sustained humanitarian access. I've got to say, though, it's not really happening, but let's listen to what he says.
I think the most important thing now is to get a pause in the fighting so we can get the hostages out and we can get aid in. Crucially, what we must then try and do is turn that pause into a permanent, sustainable ceasefire without a return to more fighting and more bloodshed. But we'll only do that if a whole lot of conditions are fulfilled. We've got to get the Hamas leaders out of Gaza. We've got to dismantle the terrorist infrastructure. And we've got to give the Palestinian people a sense that there is a future where they can have a Palestinian-led government and there is a long-term perspective towards a two-state solution. But security for Israel is going to be vital, as well as a future for the Palestinians, and that's what we should work on. I
noticed the use of the word we there. It was repeated throughout David Cameron's speech. We. The United Kingdom. Yeah. Are we doing enough? Should we be doing more? Is our involvement the right one? Your thoughts, Aaron?
Well, on this aid package to 275,000 people in Gaza, this is precisely the sort of thing that I think the public wants aid to be used for. Humanitarian disasters, relief, natural disasters, war, etc. Clean drinking water, contraception, women's health. What they don't want it to be spent on is actually what it's often spent on, which is, quote-unquote, development, building a business district in Quito, Ecuador, or building private surgeries in India, which, by the way, both of those are funded by UK aid. I would reduce UK aid, but this is precisely, it's about £12 billion a year at the moment. This is precisely the kind of thing that money should be spent on. In terms of what Britain can do, realistically, he also said, get the Hamas leaders out of Gaza. They're not in Gaza.
I know.
They're in Qatar. I mean, so, look, Britain realistically can do something. You know, we're a tier 2 power, I suppose. We're on the Security Council. We have nuclear weapons. But realistically, we're not China. We're not the US. And because of this neck of the woods, you know, we're not Saudi Arabia either. We can do a significant amount, but I think somebody like Cameron probably has delusions about how much we can do.
What did you think then? Do you think that the UK is kind of... Are we acting as though we are bigger, more influential perhaps than we are? Are we doing
do it
enough?
Constantly. There's this fantasy that we have. I was born in the empire, but it's over. We have the fantasy that we have that we're still a first-class great power, a fantasy that we have we're still rich, a fantasy that we have we're still efficient, a fantasy that we still have strong and effective armed forces, which can step in civil matters like this when they're required. We have none of those things. We're an increasingly poor country living on debt. Our real position in GDP per head is way down. We pretend to be in the top 6 or 7. We're actually somewhere, I think, maybe in the top 30. We're nothing like as big as we think we are. I'm absolutely not against humanitarian aid when people are starving and have nowhere to live. We should give what we can for that, and what the measure of it is that we can effectively deliver, I don't know. All aid is complicated by actually delivering it on the ground when there are existing people there who want to have their cut of it and want to have their share of the credit for it arriving. So you can't just send it and hope it will arrive. But there's a great delusion also among a lot of particularly broadcast media. If you can get a television crew into a country, You can get an army of 100,000 people in there, or you can get a huge tonnage of relief in there. It's very, very difficult. It's comparatively easy to get TV crews into places, but the major logistics of getting aid or military force into places is huge and very expensive. We haven't got it. I think it is time in general, in examining all these things, that the political leaders of this country acknowledge that we are not the powerful, rich country we pretend to be. It's time we admitted we're a modest country off the northwest coast of Europe, which actually has many problems of its own which are unsolved, and which is in no position to go around telling the rest of the world what to do.
So do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I do. Look, Peter and I agree on a little bit too much, given that we come from different sides of the political divide. Which
in itself is quite interesting, is it not? Because many people would say that actually, when you hear, about the situation, the protests and all the rest of it, free Palestine, whatever, a lot of people will say, well, this is a left-wing mindset. Yeah. But actually, it's not.
Well, no, I would agree with that. And I think maybe we'll talk about this more in a moment. But for instance, in terms of where Gazans are, they want a sovereign country of their own. They want to be able to self-govern. They don't want to come to Europe. And I think, look, it's one of those shibboleths you hear from the right very frequently. They all want to come here. Gazans don't. They want a country of their own. Let's support them in that ambition.
Well, actually, an MP today in PMQs, I'll come to that in a second, he was saying that what we need is a scheme similar to what we had for the Ukrainians. So we should be opening up for refugees here. What would you make to that? Coming up at 7 o'clock is Nigel Farage. He's with me now. Good evening to you, Nigel. Would you support such a scheme?
No, I wouldn't. We've taken 500,000 genuine refugees since 2016. That's a very, very big number. And today, somewhere between 450 and 500 young men have crossed the English Channel, again, all of whom pose a burden. So, no, I wouldn't. And I'll be debating tonight, as the Rwanda bill ping-pongs back and forth from the Commons to the Lords, is this solution, is an end in sight, or are we in for a summer where tens of thousands of more young men cross into Dover?
There you go. That's Nigel Farage. He will be up at 7 o'clock. Let's just listen, shall we, to the MP at PMQs today that was requesting that scheme. Listen.
Every month in Hammersmith, we hold Ukrainian Open House to bring together all those supporting Ukrainian families who have fled that war. And every month, I'm asked why there are not similar visa schemes to allow Palestinians to join their relatives in the UK or be hosted by families who wish to give them refuge here. Yes. What's the government's answer to that?
Strong reactions from you, Aaron, to that clip. What's the matter?
Oh, well, Andy Slaughter is the MP, I think, in West London. I think someone like Fulham. He's just a bit of a wet wipe. Look, Palestinians don't want to leave. They don't want to be displaced. They want a sovereign country of their own. That's what this whole thing is about. And, of course, that's a very contentious thing in terms of how we get there. But even David Cameron's saying we want a two-state solution. Look, everybody's been saying that for a very long time. I'm not suggesting it's easy. But the idea that the solution to this is displacing the people who don't want to be displaced is naive, it's stupid, it's counterproductive. And
but he would say, well, if they don't want to be displaced, then it doesn't apply to them. He would argue that the scheme would apply to people that want to be relocated.
If Britain is going to make that kind of contribution, which is a huge contribution to offer, potentially hundreds of thousands of people asylum, then we should be supporting some kind of a ceasefire and some kind of reconstruction in the Gaza Strip. Now, I don't think we've got the money to do that, by the way. But if that's the kind of intervention he's talking about, then that'd be far more useful. No, Palestinians do not want to leave what they view as their home country. This is kind of, liberalism, I think, going up its own backside.
Do you agree?
We've moved completely on from what we were discussing, which was humanitarian aid for people who hadn't got enough to eat, to the politics of Gaza. I don't think, in general, that people do want to leave where they live. In fact, one of the few things I've ever said in favour of David Cameron was that during the Syria crisis, he concentrated very hard on ensuring that the people displaced by that foolish war were, at least for the most part, housed close to their original homes, so that when things finally calmed down, they had a good chance of going back. They didn't want to leave everything they knew and move to another country, and most people don't. I don't, you don't. I don't think most people, given the choice, would want to do it. The Gaza crisis is not about people wanting to leave Gaza and come to live in Britain. It's a bizarre thing to say from someone who I suspect hasn't thought about it very much.
I want to show you something after the break. I'll just play you a few clips, actually, about what some students in Bristol are currently doing. They feel very passionate about this subject. We'll discuss it in a sec, but let me see if I can show you some of the images there. They're basically saying that there's a genocide that's happening, and they're having none of it. They've basically barricaded themselves inside the Wills Memorial Building at Bristol University here. They've got a list of demands, ladies and gents. There's 6 demands here. I really want to talk about this with you in a couple of seconds, see whether or not you think this is the kind of stuff that should be going on. Will it make any difference or not? I also want to talk to you about childcare. Have we got it right in this country or not? I'll see you in 2.